Hello, everyone, and welcome to English Digest. I'm Pat.
And I'm Elsie.
And today we're looking at our picture writing unit for this month. This is a writing unit where we're asked to describe what's going on in a single picture and then add a few more details to kind of build up a story about this picture. So we've got it. I think it's pretty obvious to anybody what this picture is. It is one of the most famous pictures in the world. Have you ever been to any really famous art museums, Elsie?
Oh, yes, I've been to actually this one in the picture.
You've been to the Louvre?
The Louvre.
Fantastic.
Right, when I was on my honeymoon.
And did you... Wait, is that you in the picture?
No, it's not. But I was standing in front of the Mona Lisa picture.
You've done it. You've actually queued up.
Right.
And did it take a long time to wait?
Yes, a lot of people were there lining up in front of the picture.
Was it worth it?
Yes, for one time. Once in a lifetime, you gotta see it in person, but maybe you don't need to look at it the second time.
Okay, I've never been to the Louvre. I'm not sure if I would. I'm not sure if I'd enjoy the crowds as much. I'd like to check out the other stuff in the Louvre. But maybe this is just like one of those things like riding on the Tokyo subway at rush hour.
Right.
You do it for the experience and then you don't do it again.
True.
I have been to the National Portrait Gallery in the UK, in London, in Trafalgar Square, and a couple of the other art galleries in London, the Tate Modern. And I think I did go into the Guggenheim in New York for a bit when I was there, but that's like 20 years ago and I've forgotten.
Were there a lot of people like in this picture?
No, nothing quite this crowded. And when I went to these museums, it was before camera phones, so you didn't have to worry about that sort of thing.
Okay.
Okay, well, let's start talking about this article and this writing sample. And as always, we need to start with the instructions. And the instructions are, please look at this picture, or please look at the picture above carefully and write a passage in 2 paragraphs with at least 120 words. In the first paragraph, describe what you see in the picture. And there's a hint using the 5 W's. We'll talk about those in a moment. In the second paragraph, share what you think. For example, the hidden messages about what is going on in the picture. And this is a pretty typical approach. You start off writing about what you definitely can see, describing all the details, and then you start to make up the story side to kind of explain a bit what's going on that you don't see.
今天的提示呢，告诉我们的是这个图片当中呢是设于某美术馆。那你认为这张图片所捕捉的景象跟想传达的讯息是什么？而你对图中的画面有什么样的想法？请根据这个图片写一篇英文作文。文分2段。第一段注意你要描述图片的内容，也就是你看到的，包括呢人、事物以及发生的事件。那第二段你要以游客或是馆方的立场来表达你对这张图所呈现的景象看法。那文长至少是120个单词。
So when you're describing the picture in the first paragraph, you don't need to put in every tiny detail. It's not like you start on the left, describe it, move across left to right, describing every single thing. The most important thing is to communicate the main idea and to put in the smaller details only if you're going to refer to them in the story part in the second paragraph. If there are small details that aren't super important to the story, you can probably leave them out.
没错，不用每一个细节都说到，好，说重要的就好了。那这边呢，还提醒我们呢，单图式的看图写作想象空间是比较大的，所以你叙事的人称呢，也是选择相当自由的。那另外呢，在时间的铺陈上也比较有弹性，但是你仍需注意情节的起承转合这4个部分哦。那图片本身呢，可以当作叙事的起点，也就是背景原因，也可以当作过程或者是结果，看你要把它放在哪个部分都是可以的。那依照提示的要求，本次的单图式看图写作可以参考以下的步骤。
So we can use our question words here, the 5 W's and 1 H. What, where, when, who, why, and how to talk about all the things that are going on, and these words will help us describe the picture and everything in it. And this sensible approach is great for helping you brainstorm, and it helps you make sure you don't leave anything out.
没错，第一个我们在第一段的时候，先仔细观察图片的内容，可以用到 5W， 也就是5个 WH 的问句，还有一个 how 的问句，来看看呢这些图片的细节是什么。那解读图片所要传达的讯息之后，设定整篇故事所要表达的主旨。那根据这个主旨，将各项的图片细节串联起来哦，串联成一个合理而且生动精彩的故事。
So with this kind of article, you've got to try not to introduce new information in the second paragraph if you've not really mentioned it in the first. So in the second paragraph, you're not adding more details to the picture, you're kind of explaining what's behind those 5 W's, 1 H, why, who, what, and so on. So when you're planning this kind of writing piece, you need to know where you're going with the story. You've almost got to think about, okay, what's the story first?and then I can add the details in later.
是的，那第二段呢所提出的想法，你必须呼应前段故事中的情节，你不要第一段写的这些细节，然后跟第二段完全不相关，好，那就不行了，两段是要呼应的。
And one of the most important things to think of here, as with a lot of writing, whose point of view are you giving? Because a young person will see things differently and think about things differently from an older person. If you're one of the people in the crowd and you're writing their point of view, is it your first time seeing the Mona Lisa or your second? What about the perspective of a security guard who works in the museum? What about the point of view of a very short person, like me, who was in a crowd and couldn't see? What if you were a very tall person? Everybody's going to have their different way of thinking about the picture. So choosing your point of view or your perspective is really important.
选择适合的人称，提供叙述的角度是很重要的。你到底是游客还是管方的立场？好，这边要特别小心。那另外呢，为了叙事的需要，你可以为相关的人物命名。
So when we're describing something, third person is quite common. He does this, there is a person here, with these declarative sentences. There are some people here. There is this thing here. They are looking at a picture. A lot of there is, there are, and so on. We'll most likely use present tense as if the picture is happening right now. So we say there is instead of there was. And it's often continuous tense as well. They are standing. They are moving. What are they doing now? We could use simple past and continuous if that's how we're framing things. And we could also use first person if we're talking about you are being in the picture. This is what I saw. But depending on your point of view choice, that will inform which tense you use.
所以如果你选择呢是你自己在图片当中的话，你的叙事就会是第一人称。那如果你是管方的话，那可能就要用第三人称来叙述。那时间上，图片所捕捉的通常都是已经发生的，所以呢，时态会原则上使用过去式系列，像是过去简单式啦、过去完成式，或是过去的未来式，也就是 would 这个字，可以把它用出来。不过呢，为了使读者有置身于图片画面的临场感，你也可以像我们两篇的范文一样，选用现在式系列的时态。
Okay, so now we've thought about our approach. We've had a talk about what kind of things we're going to expect to see in this article. Let's start brainstorming. And there are many ways you can brainstorm with just little notes, with kind of planning things out. Here we've got quite a cool structure you can use.
对呀，这边的 structure 好像以前都没有看过哈，它叫做蜂巢故事图，它包含了图片的各项内容，例如呢 title 标题，还有像是人物、时间、地点、发生的事件、原因跟寓意，好，都可以把它填上去。那有了这些资讯之后呢，你再把它们延伸成故事的大纲，那就会容易许多。
So we did talk about our 5 W's and 1 H when we outlined this article, and you could just make a note on a piece of page. You could just put this in a word map. You could do bullet points. But here we're using this honeycomb structure because one thing tends to lead to the next. If you follow it around in this like a clock, starting with where, then it's quite logical and sensible, so it is helpful. And then you get round to the more interesting bits like the who and the thoughts later. It's also a good visual one because you can kind of add it right onto the edges. You've got the main idea in the middle and so on. So if our main idea is seeing Mona Lisa with a crowd, then we can get those details on top. So we've got the where. And our where is?
The Louvre.
Okay, and of course that's in France. Right. And then what? What are the people doing?
Oh, there's a crowd looking at Mona Lisa.
Okay, of course that's one of the most famous paintings in the world.
Right.
Yeah, and because it's so famous, you don't really need to describe it. If you just say Mona Lisa, every reader will know what that is. You don't have to explain, oh, it's a woman, she's got an odd smile, she's doing this. You could mention it's Da Vinci's painting, but when it's something so famous, you really don't need to explain it.
Right.
We've got why here. Why are people looking at it? Because
it's famous.
Yeah, it's Da Vinci's most famous painting. And now you can start to think about the thoughts. What is your opinion of what's going on? And this is where really you're thinking ahead to the second part of the story. So in this case, we're taking from the basic sample, and what are the person's thoughts about it?
Okay, 所以这边我们看到他的想法是 amazing experience. So it was an amazing experience, despite the crowds.
Yeah, despite the crowds. And then a few more details. We've got the who.
也就是 my friend and I, 我们两个人.
And when did this happen?
It happened last summer.
Exactly. Now, some of these details, like the where and the when, you can kind of take care of in one or two sentences. You're going to put a lot more detail into the thoughts part of what's going on. Some things, no matter what kind of story you're writing, the where, the what, and the why are always going to be the same. Changing who, that will make it a very different story, because depending on who you choose, that will change the thoughts. To be honest, the when might not even be important. It just depends on what kind of story you're telling.
没错，所以人物的角色定位是很重要的，所以再提醒一次，你可以是游客，也可以是馆方，好，所以站好你的定位之后就不要改变了。
Okay, so now we've got all our brainstorming done, we've got our ideas down. Now let's try and put this in the right order of sentences, connect them up, and then think about adding more details a bit later on. So paragraph 1, and again, this is our basic sample. The introduction is, this picture is from when I visited the Louvre last summer. So we have the who, the when, the where, and part of the why all covered in this introductory sentence. This is very efficient. It communicates the part of the story or the parts of the story that are necessary to understand it, but these aren't the most interesting parts. So we kind of get them all, the basic stuff, out of the way first.
没错，所以在 introduction 开头的地方，你就可以用一句话看出里面的细节哦，像是 This picture's from when I visited the Louvre last summer， 那个 I 带出了它是用第一人称来写的，那时间是上个夏天，去年夏天，那地点呢就是巴黎的罗浮宫。
So yeah, we've taken care of who, when, where. Now let's get to the interesting bits in the body of this first paragraph. We have the basic description of what's going on. A crowd is gathered in front of Mona Lisa. Almost everyone is using a smartphone to take a picture. I'm in the crowd. My friend was also in the crowd, and he took this photo. So the most important point here is about the crowd, and that's why it's the first one on the list. Maybe if you were going to make a story about people using smartphones in museums, you'd put that first instead of the crowd. If this was going to be a story about you, you might put you first, and then the crowd, and then the smartphones later. So this is written in a way that the most important thing is mentioned first, and it's all about the crowds, and we'll return to that in paragraph 2.
OK， 所以我们这边看到呢，他把重点放在人群身上，所以他第一个开始讲的是大家都在做什么事情，大家都在 Mona Lisa 的面前。那再来呢，自己做什么事情，好，要把它讲出来。还有，他说他是跟朋友去的，所以朋友当时在干嘛呢？也要把它提及。
So paragraph 2 mentions, though there were a lot of people, seeing Mona Lisa was an amazing experience for me. So we've got the thoughts there as kind of the topic sentence of the paragraph, but it presents the contrast of, yes, it was crowded, but I enjoyed it. So by introducing the idea of crowds pretty early in paragraph 1, that kind of turns it into the topic sentence of paragraph 2. Now you could do the same thing and just have another idea, the crowds made it a bad experience. again, you'd make sure the crowds are mentioned early in paragraph 1 in the description before you get into the thoughts part.
所以在前面的地方提醒过同学，你的第一段所描述的内容要跟第二段你要呈现的主题是相关的，所以这里也是一样，前面他讲到的是人群很多，然后后面就说第二段就是说虽然人群多，但是呢这个经验还是很棒的。
So then we get the supporting detail. The crowds were a part of the experience. Everyone was excited and eager to see Mona Lisa.So the idea is that the crowds kind of make the experience even more interesting and lively. As I said, like riding the subway in Tokyo at rush hour. It's crazy. You get picked up and thrown around and your feet don't even have to touch the floor. Everybody is packed together. It's an experience, so just enjoy it.
Right, so even though there were a lot of people...The author here still think it was fun, right? 还是觉得很有趣，还是觉得这次经验是非常棒的。所以这一整篇呢，它是一个 positive 正面的看法。
And our conclusion, it was a shame I couldn't have stayed longer, but I'll have the photo to remind me of the moment. And this kind of keeps this positive tone all the way from the introduction through to the conclusion.
最后说到呢，有照片，所以以后呢还是可以留念。
So, of course, the outline is just the outline. You add more details. You add transition words and conjunctions as you turn it into a full essay. Just follow that logical, sensible structure. Don't leave out any important details. But also, when you look at your outline, you might realize you've got too much information that's not really related to the point. The outline is useful because it keeps your writing on point. You can look at it and go, I don't need this.I can cut it out, or looking at my outline, there are some bits here where I don't have enough. It's easier to spot that in the outline before you write than to spot it in your finished sample and then have to go back and edit it.
没错，所以你的 outline 设定出来之后，你就可以先看，如果是太细节的东西，你就可以把它拿掉，不用写到你的作文当中。好，所以设定 outline 是非常重要的。你的架构出来之后，你可以去决定你到底要用什么东西。
Okay, we're going to take a short break here, and when we come back, we'll be taking a look at our 2 writing samples. Alright, let's take a look at our sample with some explanation. We'll start with the basic sample.This picture is from when I visited the Louvre in Paris last summer. A crowd of people is gathered in front of Mona Lisa, Leonardo da Vinci's most famous painting. Almost everyone is using a smartphone to take a picture of the artwork. At least one person is using a digital camera, while a few are looking at the crowd. I'm one of these people. You can see me at the front with the long dark hair.My friend was in the crowd behind me, and he was the one who took this photo. Though there were a lot of people, seeing Mona Lisa was an amazing experience for me. In fact, the crowds were a part of the experience. Everyone was excited and eager to see the portrait. It was a shame I couldn't have stayed longer, but I'll always have the photo to remind me of the moment.OK,
所以我们在最后第二段结尾的地方看到一个很重要的用法哦。他说的是It was a shame I couldn't have stayed longer. 这个 couldn't 加上 have 还有一个过去分词的用法呢，常常用来表示过去不可能。好，它是对过去的推论，甚至带有就算当时希望可能也难以如愿的语义哦。那给同学们一个例句参考 George was having a bad day, but that Friday morning he couldn't have known just how bad his day would get. George 星期五那天很不顺，但那天早上他不可能知道自己的一天会有多糟糕。
So the idea of this grammar is to talk about something that might or might not have been possible in the past. Here we're saying that the writer wanted to stay longer, but they were not allowed to, either due to the rules maybe or the time restrictions, because I don't think you get long to see it, is that right?
Right.
How long do you get? Like a minute, 2 minutes to kind of look at it?
2 minutes.
2 minutes, okay. That's a bit longer than you get for when you go to see the pandas at Taipei Zoo, because they do keep you moving quickly. I take it they have people there who are like, come on, okay, you got to move on now, more people coming.
Yeah, because you got that 2 minutes to take a photo that you want, right?
Okay.
And then you have to move.
And for that 2 minutes, how long do you have to stand in line?
Probably an hour.
Wow. Okay. All right. Well, that is the first sample. It's very simple. It's very positive. It gets all the details in and then relates the crowds to the experience. So let's check out the advanced sample and see how things are a little different. The advanced sample. This photo depicts what I see for several hours every day as part of my job as a security guard at the Louvre.A mass of people is struggling in front of Mona Lisa, each one pushing to get to the front or find the best place to take a picture. As usual, they're snapping pictures of it with their cameras and their phones. Everyone is looking at their device rather than the masterpiece itself. Then they're trying, with limited success, to get out of everyone else's way once their time is up.Sights like this always make me feel a little melancholy. Mona Lisa is accounted one of the best works of art by one of the true Renaissance masters, but no one seems to want to appreciate it with their eyes. They just take a photo to prove they were there and then move on. Then again, what else can we do? Thousands of people come from all over the world to see it.So we can only give them a sliver of time to do so before moving them on. That's not sufficient to absorb the genius of Mona Lisa in full. I only hope they take the time to appreciate the other artworks in the Louvre. Mona Lisa may have become little more than a spectacle, but at least it gets people through the door so they can enjoy everything else that's on display.So the tone here is a bit different. Look at some of the words in that first paragraph. People are struggling in front of it. They're pushing to get to the front, snapping pictures, trying with limited success. All of those words and vocab choices, they all sound a little bit negative, and that creates the tone that the person writing the sample is not really enjoying this and is not so happy.
没错，所以跟基础版的不一样，基础版的是正面的口吻，那这个是比较负面的。那再来还有几个字，我们看到像是 depict， 代表的是描绘。
Yeah, to depict it can just mean to show something. We can also talk about how books depict an event, writers depict things. We can talk about how actors depict famous people. It's about the way they play them, the bits that they show.
是的，那还有像是 sliver。好，这个名词代表是一小段。
Yeah, just a tiny piece, a sliver. A sliver of a material would be a very thin piece of a material. We might talk about a sliver of glass when you break a bottle, or a sliver of metal if you broke something like that, a sliver of plastic. So a sliver of time just means a very short and kind of sharp measure of time. It's chosen because sliver sounds sharp, and again, it's a negative word.
没错，那再来呢，还有 spectacle 这个字，好，这边是个名词哦，代表是壮观的景象。
So a spectacle is something it's a noun here, and it's something that's attractive, something that people would come to see. And the idea here is saying, well, yeah, Mona Lisa is a great piece of artwork, but nobody gets to stand there and appreciate it as a great piece of artwork. It's kind of become just a tourist attraction, something you have to do rather than something you can really appreciate. So some of the other pictures you could look at for like 30 minutes and really enjoy it.Mona Lisa, you just can't do that. So is it really art to be looked at? Or is it kind of, yep, I've done it, I've ticked that box?
那最后呢，我们来看一个 is accounted 的用法。我们一直在说 Mona Lisa 它被认为是伟大的画作，杰出的画作。那这边用到的是 Mona Lisa is accounted one of the best works of art。动词 account 啊，那就是视为、认定是，通常都是用被动来出现的。那后面可以直接加上名词或形容词。
Yeah, it's accounted it. It's what people think. It's what people have judged. The Mona Lisa is one of the great pieces of art. It's a masterpiece. A masterpiece means it's one of the outstanding pieces of work by a particular artist, one of his or her best pieces. And we usually call them masters, so they're masterpiece, like this is the best. This is as good as I'm going to get, kind of thing. And of course, Da Vinci was part of the Renaissance, this movement in Italy and France in the kind of between the sort of 14th and 16th centuries where people were rediscovering old art forms and doing new things with them. And there was a real big movement of painting and sculptures and art in southern Europe at that time. So let's take a look at another piece of grammar here. We've got through the door. It says Mona Lisa is a spectacle, but it gets people through the door. What does that mean?
那 door 在这边其实是一个一语双关的用法，字面上的意思是 Mona Lisa 让大众愿意走进罗浮宫的大门，但同时也是指说呢，这个 masterpiece 这幅名画给予大众接触艺术作品的机会。
So the idea here is, yes, the door means the door of the museum, but the phrase to get people through the door means it attracts people, it brings them in, it gets them to buy tickets. For example, if the Louvre was just another art museum, maybe only art lovers would go and visit it. You'd maybe get fewer people. But because it's got the Mona Lisa and people really want to see it, kind of so they can say they've seen it, it gets a lot more people in. It sells a lot more tickets. And once they're inside, they can then go, all right, we're here now. Let's enjoy and appreciate the rest of the art. So in that way, it kind of becomes an attraction. You could also say news that a famous actor was starring in the play got a lot of people through the door. That means people were like, whoa, Ian McKellen's in this play. I don't know anything about the play, but if Ian McKellen's in it, I'll go and see it. And therefore the play sells a lot of tickets, even if it's not like a really famous play. So that's the idea here. People are paying to get in through the door to see the Mona Lisa. That's good for the museum. And then people can go and enjoy some of the other bits of art. Okay, that's almost all we've got time for here. So we'll wrap up. Elsie, in the end, was the Mona Lisa worth the wait and worth the crowds?
I would say yes.
Yes. Okay. So you would recommend that anybody who is going to Paris, that part of the world, they should take the time to go and see it.
Right. They should spend that 1 hour lining up and take 2 minutes pictures of Mona Lisa.
I mean, we'd do the same with Disney, wouldn't we? I mean, if you go to Disney, how long do you spend actually standing in line versus how much time on the rides? People will still do it, and it's fun.
True.
So...
Yeah.
No, it's not that different. But that is all the time we have for today and this article. Hope you've enjoyed hearing about how we approach this kind of writing. Thank you for listening. For English Digest, I'm Pat.
I'm Elsie.
And we'll talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.